a few days ago talking about how I basically just cut our homeschool term, our homeschool year short this year, due to some things coming up in my personal life. And I talked about how that's okay. I want to touch on that a little bit, but I also want to talk and focus about different things that we can do to wrap up our homeschool year, as well as some things I personally did to wrap up my homeschool year, some of the things that you can do. I'm also going to talk a little bit about portfolios, and then we're going to go ahead and just slide right on to thinking and brainstorming and prepping for our next school term. All right. I want to start by saying thank you all to everyone who supports and who continues to support the Cultivating Mom. The love and appreciate it. The love is appreciated. Sorry, but I do appreciate that. But we can go ahead and jump into it. So, wrapping up the homeschool year. So, like I said, I posted a few weeks ago that I had cut my homeschool term short due to some personal things going on, and it just was a lot, and I wasn't able to. I just felt like I needed to take a break. Now, you might be wondering, well, how can you just stop Islam? How can you just stop homeschooling just because? Well, the reason why I'm able to just take breaks the way that I'm able to take breaks, the reason why I'm able to just stop homeschool whenever I see fit, or because I just mentally just need a break, is because I plan properly. And because I plan properly, or I plan correctly in a way where I don't have to worry about whether or not I met my requirements, whether or not I met the time or the day requirements that I needed to be fulfilled for the end of our school year. So here where I am domiciled, we are required to homeschool 180 days. And because I planned the way that I plan when it comes to homeschool, we had already surpassed our 180 days. We were already past 180 days. So we were pushing, I think, like 206. 206 days that we've been homeschooling throughout the year. And so I was like, we've already surpassed that. The children are fine. We can end homeschool early this year, just because I needed that. Usually within our homeschool, within our household, we homeschool for the majority of the year. We may take a month off, and that's in July, and then we hop right back on in August. And that's how I usually homeschool. But like I said, I just wanted to come on and do this live just to discuss and talk about, hey. I wanted to discuss and talk about, what you can do to wrap up your homeschool year, what I personally have done to wrap up my homeschool year. We can talk a little bit about portfolios. And if you guys have any questions, of course, ask and I will answer. But yeah, so that's what this live is going to be about. So I myself personally, what I have done to wrap up our homeschool year is I just, I already knew that we had surpassed our requirements as far as the number of days that we needed to homeschool. I already knew that I had been teaching all the subjects that I had to teach throughout the school year. I knew all that already. So what I did to wrap up my homeschool year is I basically just, gave my children, we just did like a verbal assessment, just recalling some of the things that we've learned over the years, we've discussed and talked about over the year, and we just sat down and had a conversation about our school year, what they liked, what they didn't like, different things like that, different challenges them themselves had faced throughout our homeschool year. So we just sat down and we had a conversation. And then another thing that I did was I went ahead and prepared portfolios. Now, it's not required in some states or territories to have a portfolio. It's not required. It is required in the state that I am domiciled in, but it's not required in all states or territories. But what I do suggest, just so that you yourself can have a gauge on where your child is growing educationally, for you to keep a portfolio. And it doesn't have to be something where you have to keep every single thing throughout the year. It can be big things. It can be major things. If they wrote a report, if they did a science report, if they finished a course. Like, for example, my children this year, they took part in a first aid course. And it took them probably about 2 or 3 months because it was self-paced, and they finished the course and they got a certificate. Once they got the certificate, I took that certificate and I put it into their homeschool portfolio. So there's something that shows what they've done over the year. Something else that I also do within homeschool portfolios is not required where I am domiciled. It's not required, but I do give my children somewhat of assessment just to see where they are at the beginning of the year, and then I give them another one at the end of the year just to see where they are, how they've grown. Have they accomplished anything when it comes to they started here and now they're here. That's just something personally that I like to do. I know in some states or territories it is required for children to do testing every year. I myself, I don't do the state given test. I do find assessments that I feel that my children will actually benefit from, and I allow them to take those. And so I put those type of things in their portfolio. And I can show you just really quickly, this portfolio isn't completed. I did this for my brother. I homeschooled my brother this year. Of course, he's used to being in public school, so he didn't like it, so he wanted to go back, which is fine. He's my brother. He's not my child. He's my brother. Whatever my mother chooses to do, that's on her. But so I'm creating his portfolio so that my mother has that when she goes to enroll him back into public school. So all it is a simple notebook. My daughter, I usually get the 3-inch notebooks. That way I can put at least 2 or 3 years in one notebook for her. But because he was only with me for 1 year, this is a little notebook, and it's just a regular notebook. And I have on here homeschool portfolio. I have it divided with tabs for every subject that he did. And I just basic things in here. I have a couple tests or quizzes in here that he did. This is the certificate I was telling you about that they did. So he completed his first aid course, and he got a certificate for that. He completed that, and so that's in his homeschool portfolio. So putting things like that in the homeschool portfolio is perfectly fine. You do not have to keep everything. So don't think that you do. Don't think that every assignment you need to be printed off. You don't have to do that. Just keep key things. Like I said, beginning of the year, if you choose to do an assessment, keep that. Any major things like certificates or anything that they've completed, any type of writings they do. I'm really big on keeping my children's writings just because I feel like one day it'll just be nice for them to go back and look at some of the things that they wrote as children. So I keep those types of things, but you do not have to keep everything within your portfolio. Of course, you can use dividers or tabs to divide things up. I use dividers to divide up the subjects, and then I use tabs for my daughter to divide up her years. So I have one big pink binder for her right now, and I think this is the last year I'm going to be able to use that binder. And then next year I just get another 3-inch binder, and I put 2 or 3 years of her work into that. One question that I got one time before about portfolios is someone asked me, have I ever been audited? No, I have not. I have never been audited, and I have, thank goodness, and I haven't met anyone who has. So even though it is required for your state or territory, it does not mean that you will be audited or they're going to even ask for this information. Some of the things that are required for you to homeschool, you don't even ask for. So again, I can only speak on my reference point. Of course, I help other families and everything, but I'm just speaking from my personal experience. Here where I am domiciled, there are a few requirements, right? Got to homeschool for 180 days. You have to have at least a high school diploma, blase, blase, blase. Well, I was never asked show proof of your high school diploma. But in some states, they ask for that. I have helped mothers who had to come across that where they had to show that they had a high school diploma in order to homeschool their children. So it just depends on the state that you're in. Every state is a little bit different. Okay. And so when it comes to the portfolio, it may say that it's required in your state or territory that you're domiciled, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be asking for that information. And if it's not required, again, I just suggest that you put that you keep that information just so you yourself and just so your children can see how they are and where they're growing educationally. Just my opinion. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for me so far? All right. So just a quick recap. To wrap up your school year, things that I would suggest to do is 1, to ensure that you have met all your requirements for the school term. Have you completed the number of days required? Have you completed the number of hours required? And I say days and hours because some states require a certain number of days, while some states go by hours. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have accomplished that. Okay, that you've met the required number of days or hours for homeschool. All right, and you want to make sure that you have been teaching, which I'm sure that you have. But again, we can go ahead and make sure that we are teaching the correct, are we keeping track of the subjects that we are teaching throughout the year? All right, and then what you want to keep in mind is, will you even take a break? Not all families take a break for homeschool, and that is completely fine. If you want to homeschool year round, go for it. Go right ahead. Personally, I believe that children learn every day. Every day is a learning opportunity. So in our household, my children are always learning. We're always learning together. We're always reading, elevating, and teaching ourselves together as a family. But when it comes to me actually planning curriculum, I only do that 11 months out of the year. All right. A lot of things happen in the month of July for my family. We have a lot of birthdays. We're usually doing a lot of traveling. A lot of things go on in July. So July for us is just a month to just take a break and for me to just jump back on everything in August. But if you choose to homeschool year round, go right ahead. So that's something that you can start thinking about. Like, do you want to continue the year? Do you just want to take a break for like a month and then start back? Those are questions you can start asking yourself now as to when you want to start your next year. And don't think that it's too soon, because it's never too soon to start planning for next year. So if you've already wrapped up your school year, go ahead and start thinking, okay, when do we want to start? Look at the calendar. Look at what you have going on this summer, what your children have going on, what you have going on, work, and anything that you're doing as far as a family, going on vacation or traveling. Look at all those things and then decide when would be a good time, a good day for you all to jump back on and start back homeschooling. All right. Another thing that I would suggest is to celebrate that you completed another year of homeschool. I remember the first year we completed homeschool, our first year, I was like, oh, I did it. Didn't think I could do it, but I did it. And this was years ago. And so ever since that first year, I always celebrate. Whether we have like something small at the house where we're cooking on the grill, just doing something for the children, with the children, to celebrate that we have completed another year of homeschool. Because I know throughout homeschool, it's not always going to be easy. It's not going to always be smooth sailing. You may have difficult times, difficult moments to get through when it comes to homeschool, because homeschool is just one aspect of our life, right? Us teaching our children just one aspect of everything else that we have going on. So always celebrate those small wins, no matter how small they are, how big they are. Always celebrate. So celebrate that you've completed another year. Pat yourself on the back. All right, because if you're not proud of you, I'm proud of you. Because I know how it is. I get it. Trust me. All right. And if you choose to take a break, enjoy your break. All right, like really, really enjoy your break. For me, it's hard to enjoy my break because I'm doing all the things, and in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking about all the things I'm going to be doing with my children for next year. So I'm already thinking about the different type of activities my son, who is soon to be 4, all the activities and things that I'm going to be doing with him. I'm already thinking about those. So I told my husband the other day, I was like, I have this idea. I'm going to be creating these type of flashcards for him, and we're going to be doing this. Like, my mind just never shuts off. But I'm telling you, don't do what I do. All right, go ahead and take a break and enjoy it. Celebrate and then take your break. And of course, after you've taken your break, you can go ahead and start planning for next year. Again, it's never too soon to start planning for next year. Sometimes at the end of one year, I've already started purchasing or setting out my budget for my next year. All right, so that's completely fine. I would suggest to do that. Don't wait till the last minute and then you get to the day that you're going to start homeschooling. You have no books and you have nothing planned out as to what you're going to do. Don't do that. Okay. I hear little feet. Okay, I thought it was my son coming. And so the first thing I would suggest when deciding or planning or prepping for your next school year. Y'all already know I'm big on homeschooling on a budget. I don't play no games. I stays on my budget. So again, I would suggest to choose your day that you're going to start, which I've already chose ours. Ours is going to be August 9th. That's when we're starting back on homeschool. We got a nice little break. August 9th is when we're starting back. And I already know what my budget is because my budget is the same every year. My homeschool budget for my household, and I believe everyone should have a budget. Do not go out here just spending a whole bunch of fiat, a whole bunch of money on books and supplies and all kinds of stuff. Don't do that. Don't just be buying things at random. Be strategic in choosing what you're going to purchase. And that starts with you having a budget. All right. If you don't believe me, go look at my timeline somewhere on my YouTube, on my Instagram page. I have one there, receipts, where I show you that for the last 3 or 4 years, I have been homeschooling for under $300 for 2 children. This year, 3 children. All right. I do not homeschool over that. I stay under that budget. Now, my budget may not be your budget, and that's completely fine. But what I would say is I suggest that you create a budget and you try your best to stick to that budget. And there's so many ways to do that. And that's a conversation for another day. But there's so many ways to homeschool on a budget. All right. There's used bookstores. There's discount books. There's so many things. There's free resources. There's so many things you can do where you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to homeschool your children. I don't care how many children you have. All right. Now, again, my budget so far has been $300. But my daughter, she is not yet in high school grades. So that may change when she gets to high school grades. That may change for us. I don't know. But we'll see. I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But as of now, my budget, that's what it is. If I see that I need to if I ever come close to my budget or I go over my budget, I look to see what I need to adjust. Do I need to adjust my budget? Do I need to go up on my budget? Or is it somewhere possible where I can find what I already have in there and find it cheaper? All right. Keep that in mind. You do not have to spend a bunch of money. And just because you don't spend a bunch of money or you can't spend a bunch of money doesn't mean your child or your children will have less of an education. That's simply not true. Okay. Always keep that in mind. All right. And yeah. And after that, you just start planning, figuring out what books you want to use. Of course, when you have children, my daughter is 13. And of course, when you have children who are able to have a say in their education, I believe that they should. I believe they should have a say. They should have an opinion. I believe that you should have a conversation with them and actually ask them. Every year, I start our conversations off with, what do you want to learn? What are you interested in? What do you want to learn this year? And we go from there. And that it gives them a voice, and their voice is being heard, and they feel like they have some say in what they're doing. Instead of you saying, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. All right. They have some type of say, and you can work together to create a very happy and loving experience when it comes to homeschooling children, especially these teenagers. Okay. But yeah, so I talked to my daughter yesterday. I was like, we got to have a conversation about homeschool. And she was like, I thought we were finished. I mean, we are finished. I'm talking about next year. She was like, okay, when you want to have it now? And I said, yeah. And then something else happened and we got distracted and didn't have it. But she already knows that's a conversation that we're going to have. We sit down. What do you want to learn? What things worked for you this past year? What things didn't work for you this past year? It's okay to do check-ins like that with your children at the beginning of the year. But you can also do them throughout the year. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes, just hearing from them how they are taking in this information or comprehending anything that we're teaching them, it is better. You don't have to figure it out on your own when they can just let you know, Mom, this isn't working for me. Because there has been times within my homeschool journey personally that my daughter has told me, Mom, this is not working for me. Or Mom, I don't like the way this book teaches this. I don't understand it. And so I had to figure out, I had to do one or two things. I had to find another book for her to learn that subject out of, or I had to rearrange the way that they themselves have plotted out the curriculum in the book. And that is completely fine. You have that power, you have that freedom to do that. And so I would suggest that you take that and you do with it as you will, you know. But yeah, just start homeschooling. Just start planning. Figuring out your books that you want to use, figuring out the supplies that you want to get. Start bookmarking resources and how you're going to use these resources. Doing all of that. Okay, and that is going to, if you start planning now, because it's never too early to start planning. You start planning now. Once you get there, it's not going to be as hard as you think it is. Okay. And so once you figure out what books you're going to be using, what resources you're going to be using, you can actually sit down and start planning out your days. Giving them a voice is beneficial long term. Help them. Yes. I believe that very much so. Our first, and I'm going to share story time. I'm going to share. So our first year homeschooling, my daughter was in public school. And we pulled her out of public school. And so us choosing to homeschool was something, it was hard for her. She wanted to go back to public school. And, we sat down and explained to her our reasoning for pulling her out. And, explained to her that she may not see it now, she may not realize it now, but this is for the best for her. And so, I basically planned out homeschool. And then it got to a point where, she was like, well, I feel like I don't have a say in any of this. And when she said that to me, I'm like, you know what? We're going to do something a little bit different. We're still going to homeschool. You're not going back to public school. Not sorry. But I'm going to allow you to use your voice. What do you want to learn? When do you want to learn it? What activities do you want to do? What interests you? Asking those type of questions that allows them to use that voice. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, like that, it's beneficial for them long term, because then they get to use that voice throughout their life. They don't ever have to feel shut down and act like they can't, or feel as if they can't use that voice. So yes, it's very beneficial to them. And so I ask that question all the time. My son, well, I wouldn't say that. I was about to say that he doesn't really use his voice for homeschool, but that's a lie. That's not true, because I've shared before where I've had a plan. I've planned something out for him for us to do for today, whether that be recognizing recognizing his letters, or going over certain things, or like colors, or mixing colors, something like that. And he just straight up like, I don't want to do this today. I'm like, no, mama. I was like, yes, we need to do your letters. No, mama. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you want to do? And he'll go do something real quick, like bring me something that he wants to learn about. He'll bring me some dinosaurs, or he'll bring me, he has an anatomy book that he loves. He'll bring me his anatomy book and he'll open up to a page. And I was like, okay. So like a few weeks ago, I posted it actually. He brought me the anatomy book and he opened it up to the stomach. He was like, I want to know how this works. That's what he said to me. I want to know how this works. And he was talking about his stomach. So he opened the book up to the stomach and he started pointing to pictures and asking me what that was. So even him being 3, I'm allowing him to have a voice in his curriculum and what he's learning. Now, don't get it twisted. Yes, we stopped and we talked about stomachs, but what did I do? I also was able to get letter recognition in that activity that he wanted to do. All right, so he wanted to talk about the stomach, and we pointing the pictures and telling him what it is. We watched a couple stomach videos I found on YouTube that were okay for him to watch. But what did I do? What does stomach start with? And he would point to S. Okay, what does stomach end with? What is that letter? And he would tell me what it is. So I was still able to get that lesson in that I wanted to get in, just in a different way. He wasn't in for me sitting down and pointing the letters, or him pointing the letters, or me holding up cards and asking him what the word. He wasn't in for that day. But me using what he wanted to do that day was talk about stomachs, and then actually use that to still do the lesson that I wanted to do. It was a win-win for both of us. He got what he wanted, he used his voice, and I still was able to teach him what I wanted to teach him that day. Focusing on the letter S, because stomach starts with S. So stuff like that. No matter what. Now, like I said, I had to back up because, yeah, even my 3-year-old, he gets to use his voice in what he's learning. Technically, he's not in school yet, but I'm still teaching him. So he still gets to use his voice. It's not just mommy saying, sit down and do this. It's not just saying, sit down and use these flashcards. It's not just saying, sit down and look and put your nose in this book. You know, learning doesn't have to be one way. You know, there's so many intersections and so many different ways that you can homeschool and teach your children. It doesn't have to be one way. It doesn't have to be them sitting down at a desk for hours. It doesn't have to be at home at all. You can homeschool at the park. You can be outside. You know what I'm saying? There's been times where I've had a busy day when I had to run around and do a bunch of errands, or we had doctor's appointments or whatever. And my daughter would bring her books with her and she would do it in the car, and we would have whole lessons in the car. You know what I'm saying? I already knew what she had to learn that day. So she would, you know, read out loud to me what it is she was having issues with, and we would figure it out in the car or at the doctor's office or wherever we were that day, at my mom's house, wherever it may be. We was homeschooling. So, you know, don't ever close yourself in or put yourself in a box when it comes to homeschool. And I think that's why some people don't prefer my words or the way that I say things, because people always ask me, what type of homeschooler are you? And I'm like, I'm just homeschool. I just teach my children. You know, if you want to, you know, do Montessori or unschooling or deschooling, that's fine. But I choose not to put myself or my children in a box when it comes to that, because I use some of everything. It's whatever they need, whatever area they want to pull from, whatever works for them, that's what I'm going to do. So it may be a little bit of deschooling, a little bit of unschooling. For my son learning his alphabet and doing this, it may be a little bit of Montessori. It may be a little bit of all those things. So I'm not going to just say, well, I'm this type of homeschooler, because that's simple. It's just not true, and that's not me, and that's not who I am. That's not how we roll over here. You know, it's whatever serves them at that time. Because this year, the way that I homeschool, it may be completely different than the way that I homeschool next year. Because I already know the way that I homeschool my first year is completely different than the way that I homeschool now. All right. So don't ever try to put yourself in a box and think that you have to only homeschool one way, because you don't have to. All right. I feel like I talked about a lot on this live. I hope I wasn't rambling. But yeah, to wrap up your year, simple. All right. Hey. To wrap up your school year, all you have to do, like I said, is make sure that you have met the requirements for your homeschool year. Whatever the requirements is for the state or territory that you are domiciled in, make sure that you have met those requirements. All right. If you choose to, or if it is required, go ahead and create your homeschool portfolio. You can do this, again, a simple notebook. Even if you want to do a notebook, you just want to do a folder, that is fine. And just take random pieces of assignments or things that your child has done throughout the year and put it into the portfolio. All right. Again, if they have done any type of courses and they got a certificate for it, put it in there. If they did any type of assessment at the end, in the beginning, put them in there. If they did some type of writing, that you had a writing assignment or some book report, or a few book reports are in our portfolio, because they do book reports 2 a month in our household. So I would randomly just pick book reports to put in there, any type of writings they've done, reports they've done, anything like that. And it doesn't have to be thick. It doesn't have to be a lot. Just a couple things from every subject. Divide them with tabs or dividers, and your portfolio is complete. Now, in my portfolio, I put everything in here. So I also put, you can also put your, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but this is basically an attendance log. His attendance log in there, just to show that he met his 180 days. All of that is going within the portfolio. All right. Again, he finished a first aid course. His certificate is going into the portfolio. All right. I don't have every single thing that we've done throughout the year in the portfolio, just major things. A couple things from the beginning of the year, middle of the year, the end of the year. Simple. That's it. All right. And if you choose to do report cards, in a lot of states, report cards aren't required, but I have met moms and families who prefer to do report cards. If you choose to do a report card, put your report card in there on whatever your child has done throughout the year. And then your homeschool portfolio is done. All right. Simple. And then, of course, like I said, celebrate completing another year of homeschool. All right. Pat yourself on the back. Job well done. Also celebrate your children. Let them know how awesome they did and then how much you appreciate the dedication they've given to their education. All right. Enjoy your break and then start back learning or start back planning for next year. All right. Or if you're choosing not to stop homeschooling, still take a break. It's okay to take breaks. And that's why I posted what I posted a few days ago, because people assume that, just because you homeschool or you do this, like you got to be on 24/7. Now, us as mothers, we have so many jobs, so many things that we're doing, right? We're business owners. We work sometimes full-time job and we own a business. We're making sure the house don't burn down, making sure the children are still alive. Like, we're doing a lot, right? And so it's okay to need to take a break. It's completely fine. That's why we usually don't end our homeschool journey, our homeschool term or year. We usually don't end it until the end of June. A lot's going on this year that wasn't going on last year. All right. A lot is going on. So I needed to take a break. And I was able to do that because I planned accordingly. I planned properly. Didn't have to worry that I didn't meet my 180 days because we had already surpassed that because I planned properly. All right. So keep that in mind too with your breaks. As long as you plan properly throughout the year, you don't have to worry and stress when the end of the year gets here. Okay. So if you need to take a break, take a break. Let it all fall if you want to. There's always tomorrow. There's always next week. There's always next month. It is okay to need a break. It's okay. And it's okay to take one. Yeah. Yes. We have to take breaks. We can't pour from an empty cup. We can't be there for our children the way that we need to. We're not even there for ourselves. So sometimes we have to take a break, and that's perfectly fine. It's okay. You'll get to it. It'll be all right. Oh, another thing that I didn't mention when wrapping up your homeschool year, I completely forgot. Another thing you want to do when wrapping up your homeschool year, I know sometimes in certain states, families have to submit a certain type of paperwork saying that they have completed homeschool. So whether that means you just fill out a form saying that, yes, I completed 180 days. Yes, I taught this. Yes, I did this. Yes, I did this. Or sometimes you actually have to send in some type of form of paperwork. So we want to make sure that we remember to do that. Sorry, I didn't mention this earlier. It just literally just popped in my mind. So make sure that we're doing that. Make sure that we're turning in any required paperwork in order to that you want in order to submit that you have completed homeschooling. Sorry, brain fart. But yeah. Well, I have been live for almost an hour. Thank you all for coming and joining in and hanging out with me today. You all were awesome. You all were wonderful. I appreciate you. As always, sending peace and love your way. If you guys have any questions or any concerns or need help with anything, whether that be homeschool or mom life, hit your girl up. I got you. And just as a recap, wrapping up your homeschool year, make sure that you've met all your requirements. Make sure that you've submitted any paperwork that needs to be submitted. Celebrate ending that year. Celebrate yourself. Always celebrate yourself. Take a break if needed, and go ahead and start planning for next year. Again, next week I'm going to be also talking about soft planning for the whole year. So it's possible to sit down and plan out your whole year. So if you want to do that, go ahead and do so. All right. As always, sending peace and love your way. Later, loves.